So, welcome guys to the Founder's Journey. Today we have a very exciting guest with us, Ty Cook. He has done a whole lot in his business career. He started as a solar sales rep, then moved on to a solar sales manager, started a solar company, and then moved into the insurance space. So now he runs a insurance agency or brokerage. So today we're going to hear from Ty, figure out what it's like to run an insurance brokerage, what he's done to be successful. One of the big things he's done in the last couple of years is in 2023, you guys did about 250,000 in sales.
Yeah. Yep.
And then this previous year, they did 2.2 million.
2.1, yeah.
2.1 million. So almost a 10X of their sales in 1 year. So he's going to talk to us about how that worked, how that happened, what were some of the things that he did in order to create that 10X jump for himself. Then we'll get deeper into some of the psychology behind it and pick his brain a little bit. So we'll hear from Ty now and get his part of the story, and then we'll get deeper into some questions. Thanks, guys. Ty.
Yeah.
So with all the different industries you've been in, why is insurance brokerage something that stuck for you?
Yeah. Backstory. When I was in solar, I did solar sales door to door for 5 years. And I thought that was the end all be all. I was making good money as a salesperson. I was making, 6 figures, management. It was good, but there wasn't it wasn't as scalable basically is what ended up happening. And so in 2021, end of 2021, going into 2022, decided that needed a change just with the speed of part of that scalability was in solar, I sell a project today. Let's say I sell you solar panels on your house today. It'll take anywhere from 2 to 6 months, usually closer to the 6-month mark, to actually get that project installed. 6 months is a long time. A number of things could go wrong. Permitting, issues with the house, the electrical, all that could go wrong, sometimes does. So being able to rely on consistent cash flow was the issue we ran into. So in insurance, it's a lot faster, like speed of pay, speed of the sales process, and the turnaround time is a lot faster. I can sell a policy to a client today, and then the insurance company, whether it's, Aflac, Mutual of Omaha, America, there's dozens that we have access to, they will pay me within the week, and then I'm done. If the client ever calls me, I'm their resource, kind of, service the policy if I need to, but there's not a lot of back end moving parts. They sign up and then I get compensated, and that's it. That's the sales process, the sales cycle. Being able to scale that up now is first I learn how to sell, then hire, recruit, and train others, develop other agents to also sell insurance. Now that becomes an agency. I could build that up as big as I want or as small as I want. Right now, we're at about 40 licensed agents, and then we have another 10 to 15 that are getting their license. So around 50 agents, and the goal is to have 200 by the end of this year and then up from there.
Awesome. One of the things we were talking about earlier is the different things you did in 2024 that got you to this point. When we talked, you kind of talked about how you set a goal for the quarter 1 of 2024, quarter 2 of 2024, to quarter 3 of 2024. And that was your big push in each one of those quarters.
Right.
Can you walk us through what that process was like and kind of what the constraint was and how you solved that constraint?
Yeah. So being in insurance the last 3 years, my first 2 years, I was a salesperson selling insurance. I did try to build an agency those first 2 years, but the issues I ran into were 2 things. Number one, the traditional model for an insurance broker is you get your license, and we don't rely on door knocking or cold calling to get leads. We just pay money to advertisers or vendors for life insurance leads. The issue number one is a new agent would start, no skill, no experience. They were, supposed to buy leads. And so $500, $1,000, $1,500 of leads to someone who's brand new puts a lot of added pressure. And most people don't make it because it's commission only, plus they're spending money right out the gates. Usually the people who are getting into insurance aren't necessarily independently wealthy. It's someone who maybe you're in another industry and not making enough. You're coming to insurance to make more money.
Mm.
So having to spend money on leads, that was the first issue. And the way we fixed that in quarter one, we brought the lead generation in-house. I decided that when people first start, we will provide the leads. So we provide the leads to our agents when they first start to get their feet under them and get going. Once they're good at selling, they can increase their compensation and take over their lead expense. That was, the first thing that we focused on in quarter one. Now, quarter two, the other issue that I had in the past was hiring, right? So in insurance, it's pretty common, when you first start, if you want to build an agency, you reach out to your friends and family who wants to sell insurance, right? I did that a little bit the first couple of years, but didn't have a lot of success with it. And then me personally didn't necessarily, there's pros and cons to like working with people,
Mm-hmm.
And so quarter two, in order to figure it out, I didn't want to keep relying on people that I knew. I just want to start from scratch and just hire people that are looking for a job, looking for a sales job. So partnered with this company, that specialized in recruiting salespeople, paid them, $5,000 a month to run my campaigns, my ads, all the, ZipRecruiter, Indeed, all that stuff. And then they filled my funnel with, candidates who were looking for a sales job. And I onboarded a bunch of reps all last summer. It was heavy onboarding.
With that process, how hard was it for both those processes, for creating your own lead generation system and recruiting? I'm sure money was tight at those times.
Yeah.
How did you justify taking on those expenses and losses for doing those things you had to implement?
Right. So I took a big bet on myself because I could sell a lot of insurance. I knew how to sell in insurance. It's called annual premium. And our compensation rate is usually 100% plus once you've been here a little bit. If I sell 40,000 of annual premium and my compensation is 100%, the insurance company is going to pay me 40,000 as my commission, 75% of that up front. So 30 grand, if I sold 40 this month, 30 grand will hit my bank account this month. All I did was I just sold, and then I had a couple guys that I was training at the beginning, and they were also selling. The insurance companies were paying me for my own commissions. They're also giving me bonuses and overrides for the policies that my team was selling. And I just reinvested all of that into the business. So I think, to answer your question, I think the mindset, since I know I want to build this pretty big, if I make 30, 40 grand in a month, I don't want to just go on vacation or buy a new car every month. I don't need to spend my money on that. I want to build a business. So all my money goes into the business. And sure, things can be tight at times, but the thought process and what has been done before is you just basically spend money on your business until it grows so big to where you physically cannot spend anymore. There's just so much money coming in. So I'm in that growth mode where everything I make, I'm spending on the business. Even though it can be tight, it's going to be worth it 5-10 years from now.
For your business, you had quarter one, which was developing your own lead and lead company to provide those leads for your team. Quarter two was getting that team. Something that I've seen with a lot of different sales companies and sales groups is the great ones have a large focus on training and developing.
Mm-hmm.
The not so great ones don't really focus on that.
Right. Yep.
Kind of what is your guys' philosophy on training and developing the people that you bring in?
Yeah. If I'm spending all this money on leads for new agents, like let's say I hire 10 new agents, I'm spending $500 to $1,000 per week per agent. So $10,000 a week for 10 new agents. That's a big risk, right? That's a lot of money. For us, my mindset going into it was, okay, we have an office. As long as I'm showing up to the office and I'm training and helping close these policies, then it's just like I'm overspending on leads for me and I can help control the outcome. So being in office for us is mandatory for all of our agents. There's some agents in other companies that work remote. For me, they need to be in the office. We have an 8 a.m. training every day and a 1 o'clock training every day, Monday through Friday. So 2 full hours of sales training every day, plus me and now the leaders I've developed are all at the office as well. It's really difficult if a new agent who's never done sales before comes in and is just there doing the work. It's really hard for them to fail because they're surrounded by 2 hours a day of training. That's 10 hours a week. not to mention one-on-one opportunities to add more training. But 10 hours of training per week, plus you're surrounded by top producers who are selling. You can listen to the guy who's making 40, 50, 60 grand a month selling insurance. His office is just right there. So you're brand new. You don't know what you're doing. You literally just have to mimic what me and the other top producers are doing, and you'll be successful. The training aspect, we definitely wouldn't be where we are today without the training. And that's something that we will continue to do as we grow. We'll never get away from 8 a.m. to start the day, 1 o'clock, kind of a midday huddle. That's paid dividends for our salespeople.
So with your team and the people that you have developed, what are some of the key attributes that you're finding in the leaders that you're selecting that are benefiting your growth?
Yeah, so I think leadership is, definitely earned. And we treat it like sports where the best players play. There's no politics involved with leadership. We let the results speak for themselves. All of the leaders that we have training, managing, running teams now, they've all sold insurance at a high level. That's number one. They have to have done what they're teaching, because nothing's worse than I've been at other companies where the guy telling us to sell or teach us how to sell has never done it at a high level, right? And so that's step one. And then the other key attributes really is just as crazy as it sounds, and maybe this is more common in the 1099 entrepreneurial space, dude, people just don't show up. The discipline, people just don't have discipline to when they're not forced to clock in, people don't show up all the time. There's guys, they'll show up at 10, 11 o'clock, and I'm like, dude, we're already 3-4 hours into work. What are you doing? So showing up or, producing at a high level is number one. Number two is just the consistency to show up every day, 6 days a week. Show up, show up, show up. And the guys who do really well and get into leadership, they're just good at those fundamentals of just showing up and doing the work. That's really all it is.
So with the growth that you guys have had, what are the couple of things that you plan for quarter one of this year? So we're in January of 2025. What's your main goal for quarter one and quarter two of this following year?
Yeah, so now we're just in the duplication phase. Quarter one of last year, figure out the leads. We did that. Quarter two of last year, figure out a hiring system. Quarter three of last year was find the leaders, and quarter four was, duplicate myself. So quarter three, you find leaders. Quarter four, you start helping them build their agencies, train their agents, etc. The quarter four goal of duplication will never stop for me at this point. Now it's helping my leaders like Chris, Jesse, Johnny, Wesley, Blaze, all build their own agencies, their own teams. I'm helping them navigate the same things I went through where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't train this way. I need to train this way. I'm now training them to follow that. So that's kind of the phase I'm in. I foresee that I'll be in that phase for the next, several years, helping others build their agencies.
That's awesome. It's good to see that we have good leaders willing to teach others the same things. I feel like that's what I've seen with interviewing multiple business owners. The ones that succeed are the ones that have great leadership and care to teach and help others grow.
Right. Yep.
If there's not a good leader behind it all, then there's no growth. If the leader's not willing to do growth on his own, there's no growth that can happen with the company as a whole.
Right. Yep.
Which is super important. And I applaud you for developing and growing that kind of culture with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So what have you been doing or thinking that you need to stop or change in order to accelerate your growth and profits this year?
So what do I need to stop? Basically, what do I need to stop doing?
And what changes can you make?
Yeah. So I think one area this year that I kind of came into the year, a little bit curious about, obviously as I scale, there's plenty of things that I don't need to be doing in the business anymore that can be outsourced, or an employee, I can hire a staff member to take on that responsibility. I think some of my time is definitely wasted with the little monotonous tasks, little admin stuff. That's kind of my next frontier. How can I figure out a good system for all these tasks? Maybe it's an executive assistant. Maybe it's, hiring a company. There's virtual assistants everywhere, companies everywhere that train and develop virtual assistants for guys like me. I need to stop doing the things that don't directly correlate to revenue. outsource that and focus on revenue increasing activities, which is either selling insurance or hiring and training someone else to sell insurance. That's what I need to make sure I'm spending 99% of my time on.
So with that, the changes you want to make are to remove the day-to-day tasks that aren't revenue generating.
Systems and processes that directly correlate to revenue. For example, one thing I've implemented this quarter, last year, as I'm hiring all these agents, I sold about 700,000 of annual premium myself, right? A lot of that came from just, you have dozens of new agents at once. I got to close those deals. It wasn't really structured. My day in the office was show up, 8 a.m. training, go through it, and then anybody who has a client on the phone that needs to be presented to or closed, they bring it to me. So there's no predictability with that. The only thing that's predictable is that agents are going to be working and they're going to be bringing me deals. Whereas now, everyone in our office is pretty self-sufficient. And then I have leaders who are training the new agents. So my time can be spent. What I've done now is I've ironed out my calendar every morning from 9 to 12. And then from 3 to 6, I have a full schedule of pre-booked appointments for clients. So that's like for one example of make sure I'm doing, revenue generating activities. I'm spending 6 hours a day selling still. And that dedicated time in the office keeps me sharp, but also make sure that we're adding, 2, 3, 4,000 outside of, what everybody else does on my own to the business.
I can kind of reiterate on that too. I was in the office for 30 minutes today, and it was crazy to see how many people funneled in, talked with you and said, hey, what would you do in this circumstance? How would you do this in this circumstance? Or just come in and say, hey, I just closed a $3,000 premium, and you tell them great job and say, hey, what'd you do this time that you didn't do last time? There's this culture of constant training and constant access to help no matter what's happening. You could be on a call and you'll pause it and talk to them about what's going on with them.
Yeah.
Like there's no room for kind of that negativity or like, no, I don't have time for you aspect at all. It was something I was kind of blown away by. So with your business, I want to take a second. I wanted to read this quote real quick from a book that I really like. It talks about Albert Einstein. And it says, Albert Einstein gave his students at Princeton the exact same final exam every semester for 20 years. After just a couple of years, his students figured out the predictability of the questions. And so did the fellow professors. One of his peers asked him why he continued to use the same final exam questions year after year. Albert replied, because answers keep on changing. The only thing that is constant in business is the change that will happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with that, I kind of want to ask, what are the major changes that you've seen in your business over the last 3, 4, 5 years that if you had not kind of veered off and gone a different way, how would that have affected you? And then what kind of changes did you guys make to grow?
So the biggest change, my first year, I've been doing this 3 years. My first year was all face-to-face in-home sales. On a Monday, I would call all my leads, all my clients, and book an appointment to go to their house the next day or the next couple days. So first year, did about 240,000, all face-to-face. Now year 2, I had great momentum. I did about, January did like 40,000, February 30, 40,000, and then March 30, 40,000. I was on track to have a record year for myself, all face-to-face. But the few agents that I had at the time weren't grasping the in-home sale, and the shift for insurance sales was over the phone. So it was something we were kind of opposed to at the time. When something's working, like, don't change anything, right? So if we're going face-to-face and I'm selling 20, 30, 40,000 a month, we're good. We don't need to change. But long-term vision was, in order to scale, local lead flow isn't always there. The lead types we were running were kind of going away as the market shifted. So we had to shift from in-home sales, which was very comfortable for me, to phone sales, which at the time was not comfortable. That second year, 2023, I had to rip the Band-Aid off, almost like I had year 1 twice, right? 2022, all in home, that was year 1. 2023 was all over the phone. So it's like 2 different things. I basically had to change in that way and then go through, there was a big dip in production during that summer of that second year because we didn't know how to do phone sales, right? So we had to learn that, dipped way down in production, and then finally figured it out. And then what you've seen in 2024 is the result of me basically just ripping the Band-Aid off and figuring it out. So that was the biggest change and the biggest shift. I think, moving forward, big shifts will happen as legislation changes, or like, for example, Facebook meta ads, where we run all of our advertising. They changed the rule this year about advertising for insurance products. Not a huge change, but certain fields, like we can't get someone's date of birth now, which is not a huge deal, but little changes like that, you just adapt and keep going. I think it's important because I've seen it affect people. When things are good and they're comfortable, don't just expect that they will always be good and comfortable. Be on your toes and expect that, okay, things are really good right now. Something could happen around the corner. And then when that thing does happen, maybe it's negative or positive, whatever it is, you don't react super emotionally. You just roll with the punches, basically. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
that makes sense.
I really liked what you said, and I'm assuming it's kind of a reason why you've been able to handle the changes and the fluctuations in all the different areas of business and sales that you've been in. You take it as a non-emotional aspect.
Right.
Is that something you've always had, or is that something you've developed over the years of being in sales and going through that process?
Well, you've known me for a while. Do you think I've always had that, or what do you think?
Yeah, I've known Ty for a long time. I'm not sure. I feel like there's been times where you have been that way, but I've known you since you were, 14? And so as a 14-year-old, the world
You're
different
not
thing.
looking for that. Generally speaking, I've thought about this a lot recently. I'm the oldest of four. So I think the whole leadership aspect came from that. And then I don't know if it was taught or just part of my personality. I feel like I've always been pretty neutral. When my wife and I were dating in our early 20s, she would always say, Ty is just cool as a cucumber. She can get stressed about certain things and react to certain things, but I'm just always super level. I think part of that came from 5 years of door-to-door sales, because if you can go knock 100 cold doors in a day, knowing that 100 out of the 100 weren't expecting you to come, you learn real quick to kind of callous your mind and expect rejection. I think I was already a level person before getting into sales, because I'm 30 now. I got into sales when I was 21. So commission-only sales is really all I know. Like a third of my life, that scale will continue to tip because I'm never going to stop doing sales. I think personality for the most part, just naturally, but then going through so much rejection, I can't really think of any other field that you face rejection as much as door-to-door sales.
True.
Would you agree?
I would agree. I've been there as well. It's a cutthroat world.
You're walking down the sidewalk, you're walking up to their front door, knowing that when you knock, that person is going to be confused, sketched out maybe, or just pissed off because you're the fifth guy that day that's knocked on their door if it's one of these new neighborhoods. So I think that being in that kind of environment for 5 years, there's really not a lot that phases me right now. I also have the mentality that when bad things happen, that's good, because that means something good is right around the corner. I think that came from door to door. That has served me super well. The one major piece of advice I could give for salespeople is you're going to run into bad weeks, bad months, bad days, whatever. Don't sit in that and think, oh, woe is me, the world's ending, this doesn't work, the leads suck. It's, oh, sick, terrible week. That means next week is going to be an absolute banger. And then next week sucks again. You're like, man, 2 weeks in a row, I am due for something huge. As long as you keep working the law of averages, right? Law of large numbers or whatever, it eventually will tip into your favor. And I've seen it time and time again in my own career. I've seen it in other guys, other agents that I work with now. For example, they'll, 600-700 calls in a day, no sales. Almost every time they show up the next day and they have like 2, 3, 4 sales before lunch, which is really good, right? I think that's a good principle to lean on, and it's definitely served me well. Being just even keel and unemotional in sales, you have to, or else you'll die. Yeah, for sure in sales, if you're just up and down, because sales is going to be up and down.
It's a roller coaster. So with business, let's step away from business for a minute. You're a father, you're a husband. How hard is it to create accelerated growth in your business while still having a family life?
I think it's just open communication. So my wife and I'm not perfect. Like there's definitely times where our relationship feels it.
I don't think any of us are perfect.
I've worked 6 days a week, basically my entire 20s. So the last almost decade, it's been 6 days a week. Usually in the office early, 7 or 8, and then usually home after dark or, right in time for dinner, right? I've worked a ton. And there's been times where I have had to, make sure I prioritize, my family relationships because that's the reason I'm doing this, right? But the biggest mistake I think people make is not having that open communication. My wife and I talk all the time about where do we want to be. We like both of us, like we're okay. So, like we want nice things. Like we want to provide a really good life for our daughter. We want a big house. We want to be able to go travel. Like so those things are top of mind. So she's always been on board. Like, okay, in order to get those things, Ty has to work a lot. If that communication wasn't there and I was just working a bunch and she didn't know why or understand why, then yeah, we wouldn't be together still. To balance both, just requires open communication. If you're in a relationship, your partner has to be on board with those goals. Because if you have a spouse or a partner who doesn't care about making a bunch of money, and then you say, hey, I want to work to make a bunch of money, they're going to be like, no, I just want to spend time with you, right? So it just comes down to open communication. Even then, there's going to be some times where you got to prioritize one over the other, but we found that if we just communicate, things are good.
So you talked about your family life and how you guys have developed this proper communication and understanding. Mm-hmm. You did talk about goals. What's kind of your take on goals? We're in the beginning of the year, everyone's setting New Year's resolutions and things like that. What's your take on goals and how they affect your business, and if they're necessary? What's kind of your process of doing that with your business?
Yeah, I think goals, I'm a fan of like, stretch goals. I'm a fan of like drop dead goals. But more importantly, like I think people have these big goals and they don't have an exact clear how. So I think goals need to be tied to what are you going to do? What are you going to add to get there? Like what are you going to do that you haven't done before to get that result? And then what are you going to remove that you're currently, doing? Like what are the habits that you need to remove out of your life to get there? To be honest, last year with the growth, I never had like a specific, like it wasn't ever like 2 million, right? That was never a goal of ours. I just knew that if we do X, Y, and Z, I knew that if I figured out the leads, I knew that if I learned how to hire people and I found leaders, duplicated myself, moving forward, I do have goals, but more importantly, I focused on what needs to be done to move the needle in the right direction. Mm-hmm. For example, my goal this year, drop dead is 10 million, right? Stretch goal, 15 million. In order to hit that, we need at least 100 agents. So how are we going to hire, retain, and train 100 agents? Make sure that the guys and girls I have in my agency now are all selling at a high level. That makes sure the leads are dialed in. It's also finding the leaders who want to build an agency, excited about doing so, and train them on how to do what I've done, right? And so I know that if I focus on those few things, we'll move the needle. I think goals are good, but in addition to having goals, and most importantly, you just have to have like an actual game plan. Mm-hmm. And then where people miss is like they write down their game plan and then they don't actually do it. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big fan and believer of like, if I'm going to say something and put it down, this is the plan, I have to do it. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
This year and last year, I strayed from setting goals. I would set goals and put these things into the universe, but I didn't have any action pushing me to that point.
Yep.
So this year I've talked to a lot of different people about it. I'm not going to set a goal.
Yeah.
I'm going to set actions that I can do every day.
Correct.
That will move that needle.
Yeah.
So exactly what you were saying is just like, what are those actions and those things that I know if I make them non-negotiable every day, that if I do this, that I'll be farther towards whatever I want to be at than I was last year.
Right.
So it's not about, okay, here's the goal. And of course I have goals. Like I have goals for everything, but I'm not focusing on that goal as much as what are those things every day that I'm doing, the 6 to 7 habits every day that I want to be doing every week, and making sure that I'm pushing towards something.
And this has always been taught within the insurance space by people that I've learned from, Zach, and then Sean has always said it. tie your success based on activity, not the results. So I want to measure myself based on the fact that, I want to get jacked with a 6-pack, shredded, 5% body. Like, yeah, that'd be cool. But am I going to kick myself if it takes me years to get there? Because I like to eat ice cream here and there. What I can do is go to the gym every day, which I do. I'm focusing on the action rather than, if I don't have a 6-pack by the end of the year, I'm a failure. The caveat to that is, if you're not progressing, maybe you need to change those actions, but focus on the actions and then the results will follow. That's the lesson there.
For sure. With your success in multiple businesses and areas of sales, what is something that you would tell your 20-year-old self, that if you could go back to 20 years old, whenever you started this journey of being in commission-only sales, what's that one thing that you would tell 20-year-old Ty to get him to where he is today or beyond where he is today?
So 2 things. I guess, well, 3. First one.
I asked for 1, but sure, 3.
Okay, one solution broken down into 3 steps.
There we go. I'll take that.
First things first, find someone who is where you want to be and do everything that they do. So I guess that's your 1. But mentor. Break that down a little bit. Find the mentor, right? Find a mentor who has actually done what you want to do or be where you want to be because they've done what you can do too. So find a person to follow. Second part of that is listen to everything they say. Be 100% coachable. No ego. Set aside like any, don't reinvent the wheel. For me, for example, it was Easton. The dude sold close to $1 million in a year, which is, I bet maybe a couple dozen people ever to do that in the life insurance industry. So I saw him. I did everything that he told me to do, right? Because he had already done it. So why reinvent the wheel? And find the mentor, listen to everything they say. Then you have to actually show up and do the work. It wasn't like Easton told me all these things and then I didn't implement. It's like, no, I actually implemented and then showed up. So those are the 3 things. Find someone who has done what you want to do and then literally just go and do what they did. In sales, it's cool because if you join an organization, sales organization, the leadership is always incentivized to help you. I don't just train agents for fun. I'm compensated. The insurance companies pay me more, pay me bonuses, overrides, etc., to train someone to sell insurance. So in sales, there's a direct correlation where I'm going to help you because in turn, I will make more money. I want you to be able to provide a great life for your family, have the success that I've seen, but our goals are aligned. If someone is trying to figure out how to make more money, get into sales, find a leader in an organization that you feel good about and is having results, and then just do everything they say. Obviously, if they say jump off a bridge, don't do that. But do everything they say and put in the work. Big thing for us is 12 by 12. 12-hour days for 12 months is all you need to get ahead. So if you can, for the people coming in for our organization, if you just buckle down for the next 12 months, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, you will be successful. My first proof of that was Jesse. Absolutely terrible, no sales experience, 24 years old. His first full 12 months, and he was working right next to me. We were running together, 12-hour days, 6 days a week. He changed his life. He sold over 400,000 his first full year. I gave him a Rolex because we had a bet early on. So I bought him a Rolex. He just bought basically, I don't know if it's his dream car, but pretty sick car, Audi. I think it's RS3. Not really a car guy, but bought that. He's 24 years old, making 30, 40,000 a month. Like, he has completely changed his life. And it's because he spent 1 full year really diving in. Now he's our top producer. He can print money, basically. So that's the biggest thing.
So boiling it down, it's find a leader to emulate.
Yep.
Be coachable. And then be disciplined and consistent.
Yeah.
Do the
That's
work.
it. Literally just actually do it.
Okay. Well, button this up, but thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Ty, for being here and talking about your process and success in your industry. I want to invite Ty to talk to you guys directly and offer any advice or help But we talked earlier about if they want to reach
Oh
out
yeah,
to
like
you.
if someone wants to reach out and see, or ask questions or whatever, they can find me on Instagram, Ty Jeffrey Cook, TyJeffrey Cook. Shoot me a DM, and I'm an open book. My time is valuable, so I hate can I just pick your brain?
Mhm.
But if people have specific questions like how to do this with sales, how to do that, reach out, and I'm always happy to help.
Yeah, and that's our goal here with the Founder's Journey is we're looking for business owners that want to provide their help and are willing to tell their story to benefit those to come. Thank you so much, Ty. We'll see you guys next week.